Welcome to Analysis in Chains by CryptoNews.com, your daily source of all things crypto. I'm Nathan Williams, and I'm proud to present to you today our local leader, Frank Chen. Frank is in San Francisco, and a couple of weeks ago he had the opportunity to interview Chandan Lodha, the CEO of Cointracker. If you are in San Francisco and you would like to attend one of our live recordings, they happen about once a month, give or take. Check out meetup.com for the next one, and we'll announce it on the show as well. But for now, strap in and enjoy.
This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neil Kieran.
All right, so I'm Frank. I'm from the Analysis in Chains podcast. I don't know if you guys actually listen to the podcast, but if you are interested, it is run by a duo originally from Canada, Nathan and Neil. So if you go on like iTunes or whatever podcast material that you usually get to, Analysis in Chains is where it's at. So today we have with us Chandan. Chandan is the CEO of Cointracker. Cointracker is a portfolio management system for cryptocurrencies. And I think there's also like an arbitrage thing that you're building out as well on Cointracker. So Chandan will talk more about that, but I'll let him introduce himself. Today's format will be a little shorter. It'll be like 15 to 20 minutes of finding out a little bit about Chandan's background, his motivations to be in the cryptocurrency scene, and then the rest will have networking and also Q&A where you guys can come up and ask him a bunch of your own questions as well. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, I know your story about why you're interested in cryptocurrency, but I'd like for you to tell everyone else why are you interested personally in the cryptocurrency industry, and what were your motivations for creating Cointracker?
Sure. So the background, actually I think a lot of people have the same or similar types of stories to me who've gotten interested in this space. My background was I was working at Google before this. I spent a couple years there, had a good time, but I was itching to do something on my own. So I left Google about a year ago, and actually I was working on a couple different things at the time. And a lot of them were around fintech, traditional fintech, not cryptocurrency related things. So my co-founder John and I were actually building an app that would help people save money for retirement and move money from their checking or savings account into their investment accounts to build up wealth over time. And it was actually then when we started getting really frustrated with working as developers on the traditional fintech system. So we were using best-in-class APIs, Plaid, Stripe, and those truly are best-in-class products. However, it was super frustrating as a developer to be using those tools because, for example, the first bank transfer we initiated from my own checking account to my own savings account took 11 days and cost multiple dollars to do. And that was definitely not optimized. We could have done a lot more to make it faster and cheaper and better over time, but it was mind-blowing to me. It was the first time as an American, civilian consumer that I had been really, really frustrated with the financial system here. So that got me thinking. And at the same time, I also had some sort of hobbyist level cryptocurrency investing going on in the background. I had that going on for a little while, and in 2017, things blew up, as everyone knows. And so that got me sort of to start paying attention more, sort of as a speculator to begin with. But then I started talking to my friends at Coinbase, and I started reading more blogs, and I kind of went down the whole rabbit hole of, reading everything, seeing everything, following the prices like crazy. And then that's when I got sort of more curious about what kinds of potential applications this technology could be helpful for down the line. And I was like, okay, I have to go all in on this.
Okay, so that's when you decided to let's build Cointracker, because you could have easily built like a portfolio management system in the fintech world, right?
Totally, yeah. We thought about a lot of things. In fact, we tried a lot of tools. We tried Wealthfront, Betterment, and Personal Capital, and Mint, and you name it. We've tried all the tools. The thing is, for that space, it's very crowded. There are like decently good solutions out there. Certainly a pain point. I still think there's a lot of opportunity there, but there are plenty of solutions. And the key thing that was different for cryptocurrency versus those other types of fintech things is that there wasn't some newly enabled technology or some newly enabled opportunity that didn't exist before. So, for example, you could build that solution today. You could have built it 5 years ago. But what was different about cryptocurrency is that this was the first time that the market was really blowing up in like a mainstream sort of way. There were way more people getting into it for the first time, and there weren't good tools. Like people like were starting to have like pretty sizable amounts of their net worth invested in cryptocurrency and not knowing how much they had invested, not knowing what the cost basis was, not even knowing where their assets were stored. Even to this day, I talk to multiple hedge funds that have hundreds of millions of dollars of crypto assets stored in spreadsheets. So it was like really clear that like there weren't good tools in the space.
Yeah. When I started doing a little bit of cryptocurrency trading, I also had everything stored in spreadsheets. So thank you for building Cointracker.
Well, that's how we got started too. So we were like, this is crazy. We have to do something.
Yeah. So what did you learn about the cryptocurrency community as you were doing like research for Cointracker? Because I know when I first met you, we were at product school, and you were grilling the first front row of people about their habits, both while trading cryptocurrency and then like where do you store your coins, how do you keep track of your management system. When you're asking the users these questions, I'm pretty sure you have surfaced insights into the community beyond just the crypto trading community. Do you have any like insights that you might want to share about that?
I don't know if they're particularly insightful, but definitely there's lots of different kinds of people in the space. So I think earlier on, if you asked me like a year ago or a few years ago, I think it was potentially more homogenous or more of a similar type of crew. But nowadays, it's still tech early adopters. We're still in San Francisco, and if you go to pretty much any other major city, like people are going to give you way more blank stares than you'll get here. But like here, I mean, I live at Stanford, or if you walk around Soma, like you'll see people wearing, cryptocurrency T-shirts and Coinbase T-shirts and stuff like that. So even within that, though, there are people who are really privacy focused, for example, and really care about that. There are some people who are just really in it for speculation and just want to get rich quick. There are people who are really interested in like censorship resistant systems. There are people who are just kind of curious and tinkering. There are people who are from the traditional tech sort of scene and are sort of curious about like moving into some new space. And one thing that's interesting and sort of unique about cryptocurrency and blockchain generally is that unlike pretty much every other major tech trend, whether it be like machine learning, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, whatever else, like all the other major tech companies are working in all those areas, building products, have huge divisions around them. But blockchain seems to be one of the ones that like, Amazon, Apple, like Google, Facebook, like maybe they have small teams or like little things here and there, but it's not core central to anything that they're working on, at least not that's public. So I think that's also pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of large companies have caught on, whether it's like legit or the hype as well. What application of blockchain excites you the most?
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Like I think it's super nascent, and there aren't very many applications I've seen currently being used by mainstream folks outside of speculation. But one that many people have been talking about more recently is for helping people have a store of value or a medium of exchange, some way of having money in a place where there is not great government control on currency. So like one example that's cited often is in Venezuela, when you have hyperinflation and government is closing down bank accounts and it's hard to withdraw your own money. What do you do? And like potentially, I mean, I haven't actually personally experienced this, but based on the news articles I've read, it seems like Bitcoin is actually a pretty cool use case for that. I think that's pretty exciting.
Okay, cool. Just like a show of hands in the room, how many of you guys are like technical or like are engineers?
I'm not.
Or are engineers? Okay. So maybe it's about like 50% of the room. So like when I first got really interested in cryptocurrency, I think one of the questions I had was, how do I get involved? And so that's the question I'm going to pose to you, Chandan. Like how, if you're an engineer or as a non-engineer, what are some ways that you could get involved in the community and like find your place in cryptocurrency?
Sure. I think there's a lot of different things you can do. And one cool thing about the crypto space specifically is it's like a very open source embracing community. So I think there's actually a ton of stuff you can do to like get your toes wet without having to, quit everything and get involved. Although that's also a great thing you can do. So in terms of engineering and technical stuff, there's tons of projects that have open source communities where you can contribute on GitHub, where you can, have a pull request for whatever new feature you want to add to some service. So if there's a particular tool or a particular coin, a particular project that you're interested in, just go into the community, start chatting with folks, and like try to contribute in small ways. A lot of teams hire that way by seeing who's contributing to their own projects in open source and then bring them on more full time. In a non-technical role, it's obviously more challenging to do that in a remote sense, but there are a lot of teams that have raised a ton of money, have done a token sale, are trying to fundraise, have some equity sale, and it's a team of engineers, and they're super bootstrapped or like super constrained for time, and don't have any time to work on non-technical stuff, whether it be customer service, whether it be marketing, whether it be branding, whether it be like user interviews, whether it be any of the number of things that are also super critical for getting a new project off the ground. So I think I was recently chatting with a guy who was working full-time at Google, and he wanted to get involved in the crypto space, so he started just kind of volunteering his time, kind of nights and weekends type of situation with a project, and they eventually brought him on full-time. So there are things like that you can do to get started also.
I'd also add my own experience in terms of looking at non-technical ways to contribute. I think there are a lot of open source projects that also need help, like writing documentation. I think there's a lot of developers on GitHub, but not a lot of people who are writing clear and really good documentation. So that's like one avenue, potential avenue that you could go and contribute in the cryptocurrency industry. Aside from that, there's also just like if you can kind of like go on a local level. So like if you want to like tell your friends and your family about how like your own journey when you like got into crypto, like explain blockchain to them. You could do like blog post pieces, you can do writing. It's kind of like the more that you spread it through word of mouth, the better it is for the community in general. So those are all ways that you can possibly contribute.
Yeah, actually, one other thing about this, can I tell the story about?
Sure, yeah.
So the way I met Frank was actually at an event just like this, and he came up to me after, and he was, I'm interested in cryptocurrency, blah, 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 I'm interested in product management. It's like, cool, like, go away. And then he got my email, and he followed up, and the thing he did that really grabbed my attention was he actually used the product that I was working on, did a like very detailed like write-up about it, looked at like all the user flows, and put them in just like a simple doc. I don't know how much time he spent on it. It looked pretty detailed, but he took screenshots of different pages, like cataloged some of the different bugs that were there, some of them that we knew about, but some of them that we didn't. And then over time, just like kept adding to it. And it was eventually like a 10-page document with like all these bugs and screenshots and ways of improving it and different user journeys. And it was super awesome. I was like, wow, like this is like super user feedback condensed for free, like directly to my inbox. So I think that's like another way you could grab people's attention, just use their product and tell them how they can make it better.
So with that, I know that Cointracker, you're looking for a founding engineer. I don't know exactly what a founding engineer is, but I'm assuming it's like a senior software engineer, and also potentially a product designer. So I guess like in the last 2 to 5 minutes, if you can elaborate some of the challenges you're facing right now. And I think that will kick off the second portion of the meetup where people can ask you a little bit more about those challenges.
For sure. So for those of you who haven't used Cointracker, basically what it is a portfolio and tax manager for cryptocurrency. So basically you plug in your different wallets, your different exchanges, it auto-synchronizes all of your holdings, gives you your cost basis, how much money you've invested, performance over time, all that data for free. On top of that, we've added a tax service, print out your taxes with the click of a button. That's a paid service. Everything so far has been like done by myself and my co-founder. But we're a team of 2, and now we definitely need to expand beyond that. So we want to get first a founding engineer who would join the team, join our technical team, and help us expand to more platforms, expand to more countries, start adding services beyond tracking and tax, things around trading, things around wallets, things around, there's a bunch of other services that could basically benefit in the crypto space from having really simple user experiences. And that's kind of what gets us excited, making it so easy to use cryptocurrency that anyone can use it. Kind of like the way that, sort of the analogy I use is I feel like cryptocurrency today is kind of like, if you tried to ask the average person how to explain HTTP headers and like SMTP and all these different protocols that like no one cares about, unless you're like really, really into engineering those things, maybe some teams like Google or Facebook or whatever. What people care about is like being able to send an email or use Chrome to like go to a website. And so we want to do that for crypto. We want to make it super easy to track, super easy to trade, super easy to send to people, super easy to monitor what's going on. Like we want to make all those headaches go away. And that involves a lot of complicated engineering behind the scenes and then making a really simple user experience on top. So if those things get you excited, if you want to make it more accessible for people, if you want to make it so that people can control their own money, anyone, not just like developers in San Francisco, that's what we're excited about. So you should come talk to me.
Awesome. Well, that is the interview portion of the meetup. Thank you, Chandan, for being here with us. Yeah, if you guys have got questions or whatever, just come up, talk to Chandan, or we can like stay here and you guys can just raise your hand and so everyone can hear your question as well. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Aditya. So you mentioned about your tracking of your tax returns. So those into your app?
So the question was, do we integrate all the different exchanges like Coinbase and Binance and others into our platform? The answer is yes. We basically integrate with the different APIs the different exchanges have so we can sync your transactions and balances both retroactively and going forward. That way users don't have to manually enter in each trade that they do over time, and it kind of makes it really easy.
So if there are like a dozen other exchanges and they don't have their APIs, so that limits you from tracking everything there is.
So the question is, what do you do if there's exchanges that don't have APIs? What we do is we try to integrate as broadly as we can with like mainstream exchanges, but of course there's going to be a long tail of exchanges that either don't have APIs or don't have enough usage. So what we do for those is kind of have a fallback solution, which is you can upload a CSV of your, bulk upload all your transaction history, or if they don't offer a CSV, then you can kind of manually enter in transactions one at a time to fill the gaps. Yeah.
What's your typical user, if you consider this is the type of user you're attacking, is it everybody?
The question is, what's a typical type of user we track today? So there are a couple different kinds of users. I would sort of broadly classify them in 3 categories. One is like a super hobbyist kind of person, maybe fewer than 100 transactions a year, kind of testing the waters, trying to learn a little bit about the space. Not very into trading. And for those folks, they're just looking for something super, super easy, super, super simple. Just want to plug in their things and kind of have a hands-off experience. Those people are pretty easy to service, but it's really important to keep everything super simple, not have too many controls, otherwise it gets really overwhelming. On the other end of this sort of spectrum is like these hedge funds or these like really big crypto projects that have huge amounts of transactions, are doing complicated things like moving money from here to there. Maybe they have mining operations and they have tens of thousands or millions of transactions a year. And for those folks, they want a lot of advanced controls. They want to be able to like see really granular like what's going on. They want advanced performance metrics, things like that. So with them, it's a very feature-rich sort of set of things. And then in the middle is sort of probably the majority of our users, who are people who are sort of casual traders, maybe you could kind of categorize them that way. So they're people who have maybe a few hundred or a few thousand transactions. They want something that's relatively simple, but they can open up the hood if they want to. So right now we're trying to like sort of balance these 3 different use cases, keeping things simple but having some advanced controls behind the scenes. But as we grow, we may like sort of focus on one group versus the other, or make a way for people to have an advanced or more beginner mode. Because it is important. These people have different sort of user journeys.
How do you think about data security and privacy?
Question is, how do you think about data privacy and security? Super important. Obviously, we're asking people to trust us with their full transaction history for cryptocurrency, and especially a lot of folks who are very privacy sensitive to begin with. Very top of mind. There's a bunch of things we do to sort of protect those things. First of all, we don't ask for any personally identifying information beyond, you just need an email to sign up. It can be any email. There's no name, there's no photo, there's no social security number or identity background check or anything like that. Second thing is we ask for view access only whenever possible to all the exchanges so that we can actually trade on your behalf. Even if we were compromised or we had a bad actor, your funds wouldn't be at risk. Third thing we do is we make it really easy for you to delete your data, export your data, delete your account, and wipe everything at any time for any reason with no questions asked. And then beyond that, we also do some security stuff on our side. So like everyone who works at our company has a background check. We're all from like well-known, reputable backgrounds. Like we all worked at Google beforehand. We've done security audits from third-party security review companies. So those are like some of the things that we do to take it seriously. But it's super critical. Like if we're losing people's data, they're going to stop trusting us, and our business makes no sense at that point. So super important. Yeah.
I have another perspective. So we're also looking at data to leverage the user experience and improve it. So what are you learning from that data is something I'd like to.
The question is, what are we learning from users' data to improve the user experience? So you're right, there's tons of things we could do. We are committed to not selling that data to any third parties. So for example, we are not going to be selling that information to a hedge fund to trade on. However, for a specific individual, there are lots of interesting things we can do. So some of the things that we thought about doing are for folks who are in more active trading. We can actually analyze the trades that they're making and help them understand which trades are good trades and bad trades. When are they being effective at creating ROI for themselves, and when are they hurting themselves? Especially sort of unique and interesting to our platform is taking in the tax perspective. Very, very few people actually consider what the tax implications are of their trades at trade time. Almost everyone thinks about it in April, and they're like, oh shoot, like, why didn't I think about this a year ago? And there can be huge implications of that. So things like advising people sort of in intelligent ways, or nudging people in intelligent ways of, here's what the impact is of what you're going to do. Are you sure you want to do that? Or, hey, if you make this change instead of that, it'll actually save you a ton of money. Things like that are things that we're definitely thinking about. But we will not be selling people's trade data to third parties.
Good question. So I use the app, and it talks about tax liabilities, but it doesn't say which year you're planning on using that.
So the question is, there's tax liability information in Cointracker, but it doesn't say for what year. It should be there. We have a drop-down that says which year you can pick. If we're running into issues, I can show you after.
Okay.
Yeah, you should be able to pick a very specific year and see the information per year.
Can I ask you a tech stack for someone who might be interested in
Sure. Yeah.
And also, what do you plan to add or change?
Question is, what's the tech stack? What do we plan on adding and changing? Tech stack, Python, Flask, React Native, JavaScript, and probably many more things over time. What are we planning on adding and changing? In the short term, we're going to expand horizontally and vertically. Vertically meaning we'll add more depth to our services. Right now it's launched, well, the tracking is launched globally, but the tax service is based on US and Canadian tax laws. But we have tons of users in Europe, in Australia, in Asia, in Africa, and like all these other places. And the rules vary from one country to the next. So we want to make sure it works well for people everywhere. And then in terms of horizontal expansion, we want to make sure it works well on Android, on iOS. We want to make sure it works sort of regardless of what device and where people are coming from, whether they have a fast or slow internet connection, things like that. And then we also want to expand to new product areas beyond tracking and tax. So for example, helping on features like trading, helping on features like sending money, helping on features like making it really easy to have a wallet that works really well, that's non-custodial, things like that.
Any plans of making it adapt?
Question is, any plans on making it adapt? So this kind of ties back to the privacy and security question as well. We are a centralized service right now. We're sort of like a consumer or B2B SaaS software, depending on who the end user is. The advantage to that, and the reason why we did that, is it got us off the ground really quickly and really easily able to debug issues. However, the downside is that we're not decentralized, and that means that there is a central point of failure. So we have considered building a either local version or decentralized version of the software, and that's something that we may do in the future. It's not on our immediate short-term roadmap, but yeah, we might do that.
Would it be on Ethereum or something else?
We haven't spec'd it out yet, so we wouldn't know exactly what platform it'd be on, but potentially. It could potentially be on Ethereum or another stack. Yeah.
What are some of your top challenges from a user adoption or marketing standpoint?
Question is, what are some of the top challenges from a user adoption or marketing standpoint? So there are a number of challenges. No shortage of things there. I think one thing is some people, a lot of folks think of tax as a once-a-year thing. So we saw huge amount of growth and usage around tax time. But then when the market crashes, a lot of people, like I hear this all the time from people, like, oh, the market's down, like I don't want to look at my portfolio right now, I don't want to think about this right now. And I can totally appreciate that. That totally resonates. People, when the market was going up, were checking the app, once, twice, 5, 10, 24 times a day. People love seeing their money going up, right? But when it's down, people hate it. On the one hand, like emotionally makes a lot of sense. But on the other hand, like from a logical perspective, when the market's down, it's actually a much better opportunity for you to be more active as a trader. So there's a sort of a combination of product, technical, and like psychology challenge there on actually making that super useful for people at times other than tax season and at times other than when the market is rallying. And then in terms of like technical challenges, there's a number of things that make it more useful for more people. From a product sense, growth, like making there's a lot of intelligent alerts, for example, that we can add. Things like price alerts are sort of basic, but liquidity alerts, arbitrage alerts, kind of as Frank alluded to earlier. Things like notifications when someone is sending me a payment or when a certain coin is about to switch blockchains. Like for example, there was the EOS sort of swap this past week, or sort of ongoing. It seems like it hasn't fully resolved itself yet, but moving from an ERC20 token to its own blockchain, and you have to actually take an action to like claim those tokens. Not everyone knows that, and if you aren't paying attention, you can totally miss out on that. So we want to be very proactive in like helping you stay on top of all the information, whether it's tax related or anything related, so that you don't miss out on those things. So those are some examples, but it's a greenfield opportunity here. There's tons of things to do.
Have you spec'd out how you're going to deal with the cyclical nature of Cointracker? Because I would think that a lot of people would pay for it in July to April, and then from April to December, a lot of people aren't going to be paying for tax services. So there has to be like another way that Cointracker generates revenue in that.
Totally, yeah. So our existing business model is we charge a once-a-year fee for the tax services. So that's totally true. We kind of expected it to be very seasonal, and it definitely is. I'm actually surprised by how many people continue to buy tax plans, even at random times during the year. Like a lot of people filed extensions because they had no idea what they're doing, or whatever. But it's definitely highly seasonal. There are a couple things that we're thinking about. One is that as we add more countries, it's awesome because different countries have different tax years. So not everyone follows the US calendar tax year. For example, in the UK, the tax year starts and ends in April. In other countries, it's different times of year, so people have a need for it at different times. That's really great for us because it helps us spread out the workload. Another example is that as we add new features that are beyond tax and tracking, things like premium features for tracking, maybe for some of these higher end customers who want advanced features, we can start building a subscription that's more monthly. For trading related features, we can sort of take a cut of transactions based on how much value we're adding for people. So an example of this that I like to mention is right now, if I were to go buy an altcoin, the way I would probably do that is figure out whatever fiat to altcoin or fiat to crypto gateway is my favorite, whether it be Gemini or Coinbase or whatever it might be. Make that transaction, wait for it to clear, maybe it takes a week. Then I will trade that so that at this point I have moved my USD to the exchange. Then I trade it for Bitcoin or Ether or some other main coin. Then I move that coin to some altcoin exchange. Then I trade that coin for an altcoin. Then I withdraw that coin to like some other third-party wallet that's off the exchange. And that process takes like 2 weeks. It's highly stressful. I pay many, many different fees along the way. And the whole time I'm like monitoring it, refreshing it, like hoping to God that I didn't like mistype one character somewhere because I have no idea what's going on. And I did this many, many times, and I was just like, every time I was freaking out, super like anxious of whether I'd screwed something up. And I was like, this is so crazy. This would be like if I ordered something on Amazon, and at every step of the way, I was like calling the factory, and then like calling the delivery truck guy, and then like calling my house to see if it's just totally crazy. So I could definitely envision a product where you kind of just have a flow, and it tells you like which step of the process is at, and every step just kind of automatically triggers the next step, and you can kind of monitor and stop it all from like a very simple UI. That has to be a better way. Or as more exchanges will add more coins, that will become more simple over time. But there are things like that we can kind of uniquely be positioned to solve as a horizontal layer that connects with all the different exchanges APIs already.
So you say that you would charge a fee on top of the fee that is already required.
Right. So the question was, would we charge a fee on top of the fee that's already required from a brokerage, like an exchange? Yeah, potentially.
Actually, exchanges don't. At least the one that I use don't seem to charge a transaction fee. They use a transaction fee to put your transaction on the block.
Yeah.
Depending on, and that's again depending upon whether it gets picked up.
Right. Okay. So the question is about fees and like what fees we charge versus what fees exchanges charge. So as far as I'm familiar with, most exchanges charge a brokerage fee for the actual conversion of one coin to another, and then a withdrawal fee, which is sort of like a mining fee for putting the coin on blockchain and paying the miners. Some exchanges also charge, sort of bundle that up into a larger withdrawal fee. So yes, those all exist, and we're unlikely to change that in the short term. However, if we're sort of helping people to smartly route their orders to the exchange that has the best liquidity and price for the given exchange that they're trying to make, we can actually end up saving people a lot of money and therefore adding value for them. So it totally would make sense that people would be willing to pay for it. So for example, at any given time, the price of one coin, one trading pair, is totally different on 20 different exchanges. And very few people, unless you're like a super sophisticated like quantitative hedge fund, are actually going and doing price comparisons on 20 different exchanges to see what's going on. In fact, probably don't even have 20 accounts on 20 exchanges. They probably have 1 or 2 accounts. So we can just kind of automate all of that and tell you what the best route is. It's sort of like a price comparison built in.
So you're talking about price arbitrage?
Sort of. I mean, it's sort of like you're proposing a trade. You're saying, I want to trade Bitcoin for Ether, and we're telling you, okay, here's where you should go do it.
You go one step beyond and do it for currencies too.
Yeah, so like, there definitely are a lot of opportunities beyond that as well. Crypto specifically, we're very focused on it. It's very nascent. There's lots of opportunity, but yeah, there's opportunities in a lot of places. Yeah.
So, how do the exchanges feel about your product? Because I know, for example, you've got a close relationship with Coinbase, but I would imagine that you're disintermediating the customer relationship between these exchanges, for example. If the user's looking at your app and not looking at the Coinbase app, it's like you're kind of owning the customer relationship. So if I was the exchange, I'd almost be nervous about you guys if you got super successful. So what sort of stuff are you hearing from them?
So the question is, like, are exchanges nervous about us, or are they worried about us taking over the end user relationship? What's our relationship like with them? Yeah, I think that's definitely a risk over the long term that people might be worried about. Right now, we're sort of a small startup, and a lot of the exchanges are huge, and we're barely a fly on the wall for them. And at the same time, if we start doing these things, we'll actually end up increasing the amount of, we can actually encourage people to trade more in the right circumstances. So therefore, they'll be getting more revenue, and that's why they have these APIs to begin with. So a lot of the exchanges are actually probably super happy with us that we're just providing more usage for them, and they don't care whether it's on their app or not. They just want to get the fees. So in the short term, I think people are actually pretty happy about that. Also, it sort of helps make the case. They could potentially make the case to different, regulatory bodies or government agencies that, hey, look, there's tools out there that make doing tax and tracking and stuff super easy, which might potentially lower the burden for them to have the same amount of tooling if we didn't exist. So I think there are a lot of benefits we provide to them now. But yeah, I mean, for sure in the long term, if we're very successful, things may change.
Cool. Feel free to mingle now. Chandan has a 7:10 hard cutoff.
I'll be here for half an hour, so come chat with me or chat with other folks.
Cool.